Hello YouTube world, my name is Nicholas Montes and you're watching my YouTube channel, The Teenage Movie Critic. Welcome back to another YouTube channel, everybody. I'm so excited to have you back here together again. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a movie review. My first movie review for March, and today we're going to be reviewing the newly released film Creed 3. This was a film I've been so excited for ever since it was announced, and ever since we got the trailers for it. I've just been extremely excited for it. With Michael B. Jordan coming in, Jonathan Majors coming in, not doing Rocky, so let's go ahead and get started talking about Creed 3. Alright, so for me, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It was an awesome movie. I loved it so much. And let's just kind of start talking about what I loved. To start off the best things about this film, I think the first thing is I love the way that it pays off certain elements of the first two Creed films. So, as soon as you're introduced to Creed's character, obviously they do the flashback of showing what happened with Damien and Donnie, but you don't really know what's going on. They go to this boxing thing. Damien knocks someone out, and then they go to this liquor store, and then Donnie starts bidding on this guy, and you don't know exactly why that happens. Then it transitions into Creed in a boxing match in South Africa, and you saw this fight in the trailers, but you didn't know who he was fighting, and then you realize, oh wait, he's having a rematch with Ricky Conlan, the guy from the first movie that he fought, which was kind of his Rocky Balboa of the first movie. So it's like they paid it off, because it's like when he just fought him once, like he lost, but he didn't, like, what? That didn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, the fact that he had a rematch was actually kind of cool. But even then, that also kind of paid in how the new fighting style for the fights in the movie are. And that, if you don't know, the fights in the movie are inspired by anime. If you ever wondered why he kept doing those weird shots of looking at the ribs and stuff, and did that slow motion stuff, it was inspired by anime, if you didn't know that. And so yeah, I thought that the way they did that, and especially in the way that comparisons to Creed 2, where in Creed 2 he has rematch with, what's the guy? I forgot his name. With Jordan Wheeler, or his name's Wheeler, I know that, but yeah, so that I thought that stuff was great. So I thought, but also introduced a new fighting style for this film. Next thing to talk about is the way that it also pays tribute to, and then when it comes to like the stuff for Creed 2, I love that we have him being friends with Victor Drago, because it's like, if you remember the last movie, they were like trying to kill each other. Like they were literally like beating the crap out of each other in that final fight. And now you see them, Creed is trying to become this mentor to all these future boxers for this new generation of boxers. And he's like saying, well, we need to get this fight going. We need to get this fight. And he's like shaking his hands. And when he gets to the final fight, he trains with him. And I'm like, and it's not out of like hatred. It's trying to get him to train, and it's like, this is good. I'm loving this. Like, I love the respect. I love the character growth, the character development. Love that stuff. And so yeah, that was one of my favorite things about the film. Now let's talk about the characters themselves. Personally for me, I thought the stuff that they did with Creed's character, the fact that you're taking Rocky out of the film and just having Creed as the main character, I thought that was just a great thing. And you really get to learn a lot more about him, not just of the past with Damien, but also just learn a lot more about him and really get to see of what he's doing in that. They don't do the Rocky 3 stuff where Rocky 3 was about him becoming the big champion. No, he's retired and now he's training a new generation of champions, but he's doing it right where he doesn't lose all his money and then he gets stuck with a bad guy. No, he's actually doing it right and he's doing all that, and I guess it would make sense for a modern era film, for a film in the Rocky franchise. So yeah, that was so. And but by the way, the performance of Michael B. Jordan in this film was great. And before we get on to the other Michael B. Jordan thing, I want to say, of all the films in the Rocky franchise, of all the films that Creed has appeared in, this is the film where I just look at Michael B. Jordan, and I'm just sitting here going like, bro, this man looks like Apollo Creed. This man looks like him. And I'm just sitting here going like, bruh. Like you see that he's kind of old. You see the muscles. You see the way he works out. You see the little beard, the mustache, the hair a little bit. Like, oh my God, it's so good. And then even on the other Michael B. Jordan aspect, this is also his directorial debut. So let's talk about that. And really, I love the way that they actually let's talk about that later because I want to talk about the other characters. I also love the stuff they did with Bianca, where because it actually affects her hearing, she's actually producing the music instead of doing it, and so I thought that's actually a unique way to continue her story. And then of course the stuff they did with Amara, I thought was interesting. I definitely thought it was interesting, where she might become a fighter in the future, and she is all about boxing. And that kind of set up something I wanted to talk about later on, but I'll talk about it now. That throughout the movie, you see her training with her father, and I feel like, obviously we know more Creed films are coming by Michael B. Jordan, and he said, so I'm thinking, what if they made a Creed film that focused on the daughter, and what it meant, what is it for a girl boxer, but also a girl boxer that's deaf. And to me, that would be an interesting story. Obviously, that's kind of like explaining a plot for a superhero movie, but if I'm being honest, that's real. Like, what would a boxer be like that's deaf and also a girl? And I would like to see that. So I think that would personally be a very fun idea. And then even the little Duke character, I thought had some nice moments, that he was a little more the mentor in the film. It's like, it was cool to see him to do more. And then of course, the next big character that's introduced in this film is Jonathan Majors as Damian Anderson. I was about to say Damian Wayne. That's Robin. Robin's not in this movie. He would beat his ass with the blade. But no, Jonathan Majors' performance in this film was great, and his character is really complex, where he spent half of his life in a cell, and he saw Creed basically living his life that he should have had. Where, you gotta remember, in the first opening scene, he was the boxer. He was the one doing the fights, not really Creed. Sure, he beat up a guy, but Damien was more of the boxer. And you watch this movie, and it's like, that's crazy. And he got that back. And it's like it's kind of going to all of his head. And like now he's now a champion of the world. Creed can't do anything about it. And so it's like kind of crazy. But also, of all the Creed villains, he's probably he's one of the villains that I think feels like a massive threat to our character. Like, he literally punches Creed without being in the ring. He's a threat. Now, I will say this, I don't know if I would say he's a bigger threat than Victor Drago, because Victor Drago, I mean, obviously he's one of our friends now, but he was a massive threat, and it's like I felt scared for Creed in that film. It's like you feel the intensity in that film, and in this movie, it's like you still feel scared, but you don't feel as scared as the way you did with Victor Drago. And so it's like, man, this guy is crazy to me. And then I think the final thing I'll close out on the good on this one, is basically Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. So, and that was actually something that was kind of interesting to me. For me, you know, what's crazy about all three Creed films is that each film was directed by different people. So the first film, directed by Ryan Coogler, who also directed Black Panther, so naturally I love that film so much. Then, the second film was directed by someone else, though I think Ryan Coogler was a producer in that movie. And then this one was directed by Michael B. Jordan, which is his directorial debut. And I think his way of doing stuff, obviously the storytelling, top notch. Love it. But I think the big thing that I loved about this film is the way they did the boxing scenes, which at first, it took me a while, it took me a few times to get to it, because it's like, sure, they did some anime punches, but then they did some very clever punches to where it's like, you actually kind of almost broke your cheek a little bit when when Jonathan Majors punched a guy, and it's like, that's pretty crazy. And the way they used the slow motion shots I thought was great. I guess you could also say the way that he had this movie be in IMAX, that was something else I loved about this film, which I was not expecting. But even in the trailers, you can tell that the movie looks beautiful. I mean, you could see everything. It's very clear, and it's crisp. It's beautiful. It's great. And I think the final thing I'm going to touch on here is my movie theater experience for this film was one of the best. I mean, obviously, it's the only movie I've seen in the theater this year, besides not really counting Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, though it is kind of counted because it came out in theaters. But this movie this movie had my theater going wild. When there was a joke, everybody was laughing. But when we got to that final fight, man, when someone threw a hard punch and I did the slow-mo shot, everybody was cheering. They were going like, ooh! And when Jonathan Majors got knocked down, we started cheering. We were like, woo! Woo! Like an actual boxing match fight. It was so good. And that's why I love going to the movies. Sure, you love seeing it on the biggest. Sure, when it comes to movies that look really good, like visually, you want to see it on the big screen. But what's special about the movie theater experience is seeing it with a bunch of other people. That's what makes it so special. Where, like, one of my favorite movie experiences was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The first time, really. And as I was experiencing everything for the first time, I was watching it with other people, and they were laughing with it. They were getting scared with it. They were feeling tension with it. They were cheering with it, and it was all great. Or even Avengers: Infinity War, where of course I watched the Hulk versus Thanos fight and Thor arriving in Wakanda. But every other scene, I was connecting with it. I was cheering with the audience. I loved it. And even Spider-Man: No Way Home, where I was cheering with the audience, where my theater was loud, bro. My theater was loud for No Way Home. And so, like, that's the thing. Movie theaters are great. And especially with films like this is great. And honestly, I kind of regret it, because I really wish I could have seen these movies earlier, like about 5 years ago, when Creed 2 came out, so I could experience that, because the final fight in Creed 2 is one of my favorite fights in the whole Rocky franchise, because it's just so personal, but also the punches and fights in it are great. So, that's all I wanted to say. Overall, the movie had great stuff in this movie. Now let's talk about some of the negative stuff I had to say about the film. Now, there's a couple things that I just didn't really like about this film. The first thing is, when you get to the reason as to how Jonathan Majors' character is able to get that chance of becoming champion of the world, if you really think, like, I watched a video, and my friend and someone was talking about this, And I didn't understand what they meant until I saw it. And once you put it all together, you start to realize where that it wouldn't really result in him being in a boxing match. It would result in the police getting involved. So that's kind of one thing. Other thing you want to talk about here is the absence of Rocky Balboa. Obviously, this film didn't feel the same like the other Rocky films, but at the same time, I still thought it told a great story. Just don't. The only thing is, I just don't know how you can really continue the Rocky character in the movie. Like, you know what I mean? And I guess you could say I missed him. Though they did play the music when Jonathan Majors' character got knocked down. So I thought that was great. But overall, I didn't really like... I really wish Rocky was in it. Though, what kind of story could you tell with him that is continuing his journey? And then you get to the mother dying. Which, honestly, I probably thought this was like the weakest part of the movie. Because you had so much going on with the family and showing what they're like, and when you just add that in, you didn't really add anything to make me care about it too much. Where it's like, sure, she was having a stroke and then she had a stroke again, and right before this, Creed talks very badly to his mom, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry," and it's like I couldn't really feel emotional. Like, sure, Creed's acting was great, but it's like, you don't really feel emotional for it. And I wish I could, but I didn't. So that's how I felt. So that's pretty much my thoughts on Creed 3. Overall, that's pretty much it. Overall, this was a great film, a great sequel to Creed 1 and 2. I loved it so much. It was a fantastic film. Absolutely amazing. And so that's pretty much all my thoughts on Creed 3. Before I give my final score, be sure to comment down below. What are your thoughts on Creed 3? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Right between? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comment section below. With that said, let's get all my scores. Alright, so that's it for my scores. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All my social media stuff is in the About section over there. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.